All right, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Cohen here with you on the Sports Talk Nation, and yet another video where we talk about Jet disappointment. But this, we're going to take a much different approach. I'm not going to sit here and spend all this time talking about a game that took place on Sunday where the Jets had a lead, had an opportunity to win the game, and then totally blew it. Because it's just another example of everything that is going wrong in this 2024 season. Well, what it did confirm is this. That Jet loss to the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday is that it is time now for this franchise to start moving forward. And they have to do it, and they have to have a concrete plan of how they want to do that as soon as possible. So let's just get right into it. So again, Jets losing 28-27 to the Indianapolis Colts. It was a game that was a very strange game when you think about it, because the Jets were down 13 points in this game, yet still found a way to come back and have a lead. I mean, had a 24-16 lead in this game, thanks in major part to Breece Hall having a great game, 78 yards on the ground, 49 yards through the air and receiving, had a couple of touchdowns. And that in spite of the fact that Aaron Rodgers, I know there's some people are going to say, well, the stats were great. Stats don't tell the whole story. Despite the fact that Aaron Rodgers didn't play well, overthrowing guys, underthrowing guys, an inability for him, of all people, of Aaron Rodgers, this is a guy who reinvented the deep ball in a lot of ways. The Jets' inability to go deep down the sideline with passes, and it's almost as if there was a reluctance, maybe a distrust or mistrust between Rodgers and his receivers, or maybe Rodgers still doesn't feel 1,000% confident on his legs, which have been battered and beaten the last couple of years. Whatever it is, that has been a big part of the reason why the Jets' offense has floundered over the course of the entire season this year with Aaron Rodgers in the lineup. So, in spite of all that, the Jets sat there with a 24-16 lead. I can sit here, we could debate about, hey, should they have gone for it on fourth down? Should they have kicked the field goal? The fact is this, with less than 3 minutes to go, the Jets had a 5-point lead. And Jeff Ulbrich put the game in the hands of his defense. Could he have gone for a fourth down at the Colts 17? And if the Jets are able, could he have done that? Sure. Do I have confidence in the way this Jet offense had been playing, not just in this game, which had been kind of helter-skelter to begin with, and really all season, that they would have gotten a 4th and 2 conversion? No. But hey, that's on the table. I understand that. But it was up to this defense to get the job done, and they blew it big time. The miscommunication in the secondary between Sauce Gardner and the safety Jalen Mills, as Sauce allowed the receiver Pierce to go streaking right by him down the sideline, and it was up to Mills to get over up on top and try to make a deflection and defend against Pierce. But instead, Pierce was wide open. He catches the ball. A couple plays later, you have Anthony Richardson plowing his way into the end zone for the game-winning touchdown. Defense completely imploded. This entire game was an implosion. And then, of course, the end of the game, Aaron Rodgers' inability to get the ball downfield, nearly gets strip-sacked on a fumble, and then gets sacked at the end of the game. Nothing was going right for this Jets team as a team that's unprepared, poorly coached, has an aging, grumpy quarterback under center in Aaron Rodgers. They find a way to lose the game again. Big shock. But that's not really the main storyline out of this game. It's really not the main storyline for the Jets anymore, because we know their season's over. It's been over for weeks. The question is, what's going to happen down the road? And there was a story that leaked out on Sunday, right before the game, this one coming from the Jets press. Joe Douglas already knows his next NFL destination after New York Jets fire him. Both Joe Douglas, General Manager Joe Douglas, and the Jets are expected to part ways at the end of the season. Obviously, no surprise to anybody at all. I mean, once the Jets let Robert Saleh go after Week 5, you knew it was only a matter of time before Joe Douglas was going to get the axe. And, of course, the press conference, very morose press conference that he had outside the Jets facility in Florham Park, where he was basically pleading the fifth and didn't want to answer questions, to go into any kind of depth in answering questions. You got the sense, even looking into the eyes of Joe Douglas, even on camera, that this guy knew his time in New York was coming to an end. And that appears to be the case. Let's just take a look at this. The expectation is that the Jets and Douglas will part ways once the season ends, per a report from U Stadium. The report goes on to state that Douglas is eyeing a return to the Baltimore Ravens and has already started looking for real estate in the Baltimore area. This should come as no surprise to anyone who has followed the Jets this season. Barring a miraculous turnaround, the Jets will miss the playoffs, obviously, for the 14th consecutive year. We could talk about the 2022 draft where Douglas got Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall all you want. Elijah Vera Tucker in that draft as well. Jermaine Johnson in that draft. It was a big draft for the Jets, but the fact is he's 30-64 as a GM of this team. He whiffed on Mekhi Becton. He whiffed on Zach Wilson. And in a lot of ways, he and Robert Saleh whiffed on the idea of moving on from Sam Darnold. Maybe they should have stuck with Sam Darnold instead of drafting a quarterback that year in the draft. But the fact is, his time in New York is coming to a close. And it was, a very topsy-turvy and uneven ride with Joe Douglas, but it's no surprise that he's moving on. What it does do, it's going to create the situation where what's going to be next for this Jet team? Who's going to be the next GM? Who's going to be the next head coach? I haven't really heard too many rumors as far as, or I certainly haven't seen any rumors of who the next GM would be. If the Jets do this right, if they do it the by the book way, you go get your general manager, you hire him, your general manager, president of football operations, and you let him pick the head coach. That's how usually it should be done. Now, of course, this being the Jets, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen that way. I mean, this is a franchise that we have seen, if you remember going back with, Rex Ryan, if you want to go back even more recently with Rex Ryan, having him as where he was still the head coach, and they fire Mike Tannenbaum, the GM. They bring in John Idzik as the GM. Didn't work out. And then when they had McCagnon and Bowles here, they basically hired the two of them at the same time. Didn't allow McCagnon to pick his own head coach. And we can go on and on. And, of course, the whole thing with Adam Gase and Joe Douglas, we can go on. We all know the history. It hasn't been good. So that would be the logical thing to do. Go get the GM and then get the head coach. The head coach rumors, we're still very much in the infancy of that. I want to do some stuff individually at some point here down the road about who could be the next head coach of the Jets, different candidates. The names everyone's been talking about that are out there. Obviously, Rex Ryan keeps throwing his name out there on ESPN. He says, "Hey, I want the job back." I don't know if I really want to, go back down that road. I know there are a lot of fans who say, "Hey, look, the first 2 years under Rex were great. Going to the AFC Championship game back-to-back years." What about the back four? They weren't so great, of course, under Rex Ryan here with the Jets. John Gruden's name has come up. I mean, that's going to be that's an interesting debate on many, many different levels. His name has come up in a lot of circles. Obviously, you got Mike Vrabel. A lot of people talk about Ben Johnson. I don't think Ben Johnson's going to want to come to the Jets. I don't know if Mike Vrabel's going to want to come to the Jets. Even Aaron Glenn, a former Jet cornerback who is the defensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, another name that's going to get out there and get a lot of play as well. So those are just some of the names. Now, the question is going to be, who's going to want to come here? And what's the roster going to look like, especially under center? And that leads to this story. This one from Connor Hughes. Why Aaron Rodgers' future with the Jets and maybe NFL is anything but clear. This is a fascinating story. The question of what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. Stability is believed to be the deciding factor on Rodgers returning for a third year at the Jets. That means Jeff Ulbrich and Joe Douglas retaining their positions. Rodgers reaffirmed that this week that when he said he hopes to play for Ulbrich until the end, whatever that's supposed to mean, obviously. If they're gone, Rodgers is believed to be two as the organization ushers in a fresh start, including the quarterback position. That does not mean Rodgers will retire, though it's not impossible. But his time with the Jets could come to an end. The concept of the Jets running it back next year seems far-fetched at the moment. The outlook on that could change, though, while the odds of the playoffs they're out the window. There's an outside chance that the regime could convince Woody Johnson and Chris Johnson about trying to run it back in some form. So basically, Aaron Rodgers says last week he said, "Yeah, I would be interested in coming back next year." And now this story here by Connor Hughes saying that he wants the stability. He came here because he was going to get a lot what he wanted. He got, Nathaniel Hackett here as his offensive coordinator. He built a certain kind of trust in meeting with guys like Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh at the time. And obviously, he knows those guys here, and he knows that they're going to keep things flowing the way he likes it. If another head coach and another GM come in here, let's just say, just for the sake of argument, assistant GM for the Lions, Ray Agnew, and Aaron Glenn come in here, the defensive coordinator, as the head coach and GM combo. Aaron Rodgers may not like that at all. He may say, goodbye. Let's work on a deal to get me out of here. And I think the Jets would be more than willing to do that. Now you're going to have to eat a lot of money, a lot of money. Dead cap, I think, is like $49 million. Last I heard. So this is going to be a very tricky situation with Rodgers. I don't know if he's going to retire. Now the way he plays hasn't been great at all this year. He has played like a guy who is on the other side of 40. Unlike Tom Brady, or even to a lesser extent Peyton Manning at the end of their careers, where they were still playing fairly well going into 40. Not the case here with Rodgers. Now, I understand a different circumstance here now with the Jets compared to those two rosters in Denver and Tampa Bay for Brady and Manning. Obviously, Rodgers coming off the Achilles tendon tear. I understand that, but he just doesn't look like the same guy. This isn't the same Aaron Rodgers we saw 3 years ago in Green Bay. Heck, back in 2021. Not even close. And you saw a bit of a decline in 22 with Rodgers in Green Bay and with the injuries that he had to carry throughout the course of the year. And obviously last year was a whitewash with the injury. And now this year he just doesn't look like the same player. Not even close. Again, they don't get the ball downfield very much. There's a lot of miscommunication between he and his receivers. He seems skittish in the pocket at times. Yes, the numbers, completion percentage, the touchdown to interception ratio are still good, but that doesn't tell the whole picture of what we see with our eyes every single week. And what we see with our eyes is that this is a guy who looks like he has hit a wall at this point. Now, who knows? This may be a situation where, let's just say Aaron Rodgers says and the Jets decide, we're going to part ways, but he doesn't want to retire. He could end up somewhere else. I'm sure there is a team, although not likely right now. Let's just see how things pan out in the offseason that says, yeah, we'll take a flyer on Aaron Rodgers just for a year. We're in a transition year for some team, and he may play well on another team. I don't know. He may look even worse next year. Who knows? The fact is the Jets need to move on, and they need to move on with a new regime. They need to move on, and Woody Johnson and Christopher Johnson have to allow the GM and the head coach, whoever they may be, to do what they feel is best for the organization. And that's something that we all know is going to be hard for Woody Johnson and company to do because they have been involved in everything. Woody Johnson is the reason why Robert Saleh got the axe after 5 weeks. He just dropped it on him. Probably shouldn't have done that, obviously. So, and that's another thing. That's why I asked the question earlier, who's going to want to come here and be a part of this when you have an owner who has the perception is outside that he gets involved in a lot of football business, fires or, lets go of two guys who in NFL circles and Saleh and Douglas are very popular. We can talk about the results, are a different story, but in NFL circles are very popular. Who's going to want to, of any real big stature, want to come here and deal with that in New York and also deal with whatever the uncertainty may be for Aaron Rodgers here in New York. So for the Jets, it's the beginning of now the next step for them. And I don't know what that means. None of us do. And I know that this is the NFL and things can turn around from a year-to-year basis. You never know how things are going to go. Look at the Washington Commanders. Last year, they were a dumpster fire. This year, they change things up. They get the right head coach. They get the right quarterback in the draft, and now they're a playoff team. Sometimes it can happen that way. Sometimes, as has been the case with the Jets, with the Browns, to an extent the Commanders before this year, and even for a team like the Detroit Lions, and I know they are a monster right now, for years and years, just can't seem to get out of their own way or are constantly rebuilding. I can't tell you how long this will take. I can't tell you how long this new look will take and what and who's going to take this job and what our feelings are going to be when that new head coach is announced and that new quarterback is drafted or signed via free agency. But it has to happen now. They have to find a way to just rip the bandage off and start anew. And it just cannot continue, especially for a team that was anybody surprised with what happened last night? I wasn't. I certainly wasn't surprised at all what happened on Sunday. Speaking of ripping the bandage off, let's just change the same kind of storyline, same city, but different team, and that's with the New York Giants. And, of course, Daniel Jones getting benched by the New York Giants for Tommy DeVito. It's kind of interesting how this all comes about, that they decided to go to Tommy DeVito over Drew Lock. And look, the Daniel Jones era just is over. And it's kind of the same situation with Rodgers. Statistically, you look at the numbers, they're not terrible, 60% completion percentage, but Daniel Jones just doesn't get it done. He doesn't make the big plays, doesn't make the big passes in big spots. He always either takes a big sack in a big spot, throws a big turnover in a big spot, and the Giants just can't seem to get out of their own way offensively. And it's time for them to move on. It's been that way for a long time now, for a couple of years, for them to move on from Daniel Jones. When they had Saquon Barkley there, things were rolling well. We all know Barkley, of course, now with the Eagles, and that entire regime has egg all over their face. So they're going to go with Tommy DeVito, who lit a bit of a spark in this team last year down the stretch. They're not going anywhere. You could sit there and say, you can look at this two ways. You can look at it cynically saying, hey, look, it gives the fans something to get excited about a little bit, because Tommy DeVito gave the Giants a bit of a spark at the end of the year. At the same time, you could look at it saying, well, the Giants are trying to lose games as many as they can down the stretch to better position themselves in the 2025 NFL Draft, and that is certainly a possibility. Now, another thing is this, the future of Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen. What is their situation going to be? And there's a story here, this on a Bleacher Report, that says there is a growing sense that Brian Daboll could be coaching for his job in the final 7 games of the season. And remember earlier in the year, John Mara came out and said, oh yeah, everyone's safe, Daboll's safe and Joe Schoen is safe. Not the case. Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports revealed that there's a growing sense that Daboll is coaching for his job in the final 7 games. And on Monday, of course, the Giants benched Daniel Jones in favor of Tommy DeVito. A potential head coaching change likely won't occur anytime soon. Adam Schefter reported that Daboll and GM Joe Schoen are safe right now on the Pat McAfee show. So things are brewing in the Big Apple. Things are brewing for the Jets, and they need to start brewing for the Jets soon. And things are starting to brew for the Giants as far as turning the page from what has been a disappointing and underperforming season in 2024. These teams need new leadership. It's just that simple. Of course, the Giants look bad coming off of that Hard Knocks situation with the Saquon Barkley negotiation, exposing them and exposing that front office. A lot of people to blame for that one. It's not just the guys who are in position of power like the GM and head coach. It's really just an organizational problem right now for them. Same kind of deal with the Jets. They both need to really have, I guess you could say, face a true total change in how they run their football operation, both two teams. So it's going to be interesting, folks. We'll see how this breaks down over the next, we got 7 weeks left in the regular season, and the rumors and the speculation is just going to get ramped up every single week, and with each time either one of these two teams lose in the next several weeks. So like and subscribe. We'll talk to you next time.